Hi, I'm Daniel Little, and I wanted to say welcome and thank you for signing up for the 7 Conversations Toolkit. Here at Round Sky, we want to share some of the tools we found useful for making effective change. Our mission is to help people who are working for positive change in the world get the traction they need in their lives and really make the difference that they aspire to. I work here at Round Sky Solutions with my wife, Cecile Green, who's my partner in life and work. And we've been collaborating with a team of friends and partners to offer cutting-edge new tools for understanding and working with change. We are really excited to offer up some of the things that we've learned in our journey. For myself, I've been working for a better world for most of my life and through several careers. I've been an experiential educator, a natural builder, a leadership coach, and I've been an owner or cooperator in several mission-driven organizations. One thing I want to say about our approach is that here at Round Sky, we've learned from experience that an integrated approach is deeply needed for making a difference in the world. For example, my work has been primarily focused on leadership development and working with individuals to help them discover and build the capacity they need to lead their lives with greater effectiveness and sustainability. Cecile, however, has taken a deep dive into what it takes for organizations to thrive and become effective vehicles for change inside and out. Blending these two approaches has been an amazing path to follow, and lots of hard work, and plenty of frustration too. So this toolkit is our offering to see if we can help make it a bit easier for others to follow their visions and get the traction they need to make more of a difference. In just a moment, Cecile is going to introduce you to one of the big ahas she had about working with other people. She'll tell you about her experience of organizations that had the best of intentions, but were still very dysfunctional and sometimes painful places to work, and how the pain of those experiences led her to spearhead our efforts to come up with new ways of seeing and working with teams, which in turn led to the development of a whole new tool for making sense of our organizational communication, the 7 Conversations. After working with this 7 Conversations toolkit, you'll be able to use this new way of seeing your organization to better match the challenges you face to the processes you need to address them and get the results that will give you the traction to move forward. And now here's Cecile.
Hello and welcome. My name is Cecile Green. I've been a mission-driven entrepreneur for 25 years. And I'm here with Round Sky Solutions, where we train mission-driven leaders how to have effective collaborative workplaces. I'm excited to be here with you to talk about an idea that is near and dear to my heart. It's really a new way of seeing or understanding our work communication. And when I say a new way of seeing, in particular, I mean like a lens, a set of glasses a set of glasses you might put on, which enable us to see the world in a new way, perhaps to enable other patterns to emerge that we'd never seen before. In particular, I've been passionately interested in what it takes for us to live and work together in ways that are more generative for all of my adult life. And I'm curious if you've ever experienced organizations that perhaps weren't generating enough revenue to sustain operations, or interpersonal conflict interfering with business operations. Perhaps it's lack of effective strategy that's really derailing how work is flowing. Or one of my favorites, a bad apple rotting the whole bunch. Perhaps it's ineffective, irregular, or unproductive meetings. I certainly have experienced all of these and many more. In fact, it was through one particularly spectacular instance where I was working in an organization that had been founded by individuals that were really stellar, very well-developed, passionate individuals with great intentions, really a beautiful vision for the organization. And yet, the operating conditions inside the organization were so bad that people were leaving faster than we could get them back on board. Some of them with health damage as a result of working in the organization. Sometimes there were expensive mistakes that seemed to happen over and over again that no one could fix. And in general, operations were chaotic and morale was low. And it was that difference between the really high quality individuals with the great intentions in the organization and the chaotic, toxic operating conditions that really showed me that I had quite an assumption. I had assumed that you could put good people together with good intentions and you would get good organization. Reality had a different story to tell. And once I realized that, this prompted a deep quest for me. Really, I dove deeply into the academic literature and experiential opportunities out there for understanding how organizations work, how individual development happens, and the results of which I published in a book instead of meeting cards. And today I really want to convey some of those core lenses at the heart of what I've compiled. To start me out on my quest, I had a very simple kind of guiding hypothesis, and that was that every moment that we work together, we need to communicate. In other words, there's not a single act of work I can do without communicating. And this really focused my quest. It gave me something targeted around which to dive in and unpack all of the incredible work that's really been done in the last several decades in organizational and individual development. And I realized one of the first lenses that I discovered in my research was that every moment of communication contains both a process and a content. So what do I mean by that? Process is how, content is what. Process, for example, in this moment is that I'm speaking and you're listening to me via video. And content is the set of new ideas or lenses around how we communicate at work. Now, there could be any number of other ways for me to be communicating different kinds of processes, and I could be talking about something else. But basically, in every moment that we communicate, there is both a content and a process. So these two things both co-arise. You can't have one without the other. And what I saw was that organizations constantly hyper-focus on content. So largely, content is treated as superior or more important than process. But since you can't have one without the other, I realized that there was a pretty big opportunity, a pretty big blind spot that most organizations had around what process meant and how important or what a significant point of leverage it represented. So as I dug deeper through my research and synthesis, I was curious about what is it that we communicate about when we're working. So yes, there's a process and a content to it, but what are we communicating about? What is it that we need in order to do good work together? And these 7 kinds of conversations emerged as conversations that we're already having. So just briefly, I'll list them and then I'm going to go into each one in greater detail. They are purpose, business model, strategy, governance, operations, interpersonal, and individual. Those 7 conversations happening already. They're all happening simultaneously in every organization, anytime we're trying to do work together. So purpose, in a little bit more detail, purpose is constructed of 3 different constructs. So vision, mission, and values, with vision being what's the possibility we'd really like to create out there, what's the difference we want to make. Mission is what's the work we're going to uniquely do as an organization to help get to that vision. And values are the principles within which we agree to abide as we go about doing our work together. An example of purpose might be if I walked into a meeting, I might say, why are we meeting? Now that's a micro level example of purpose. There are macro, obviously, purposes for organizations. And in fact, every single team in an organization has a purpose. The second conversation is business model, and while it can be very complex, it does something very simple, which is it explains how any organization exchanges value with its environment. An example of a business model might be if I walked into a conversation with someone and said, hey, look, our revenue's been down 3 months in a row. What are we going to do about it? That's a business model conversation. Now, strategy, which is often confused with business model and vice versa, is all about priorities. It's really about how do I get from where we are now towards where we want to be, towards that intended business model, towards that blueprint for how we exchange value with our environment. And it's really a set of initiatives, specific focused initiatives with targeted metrics that we can measure if we're on track or not. And an example might be if I walked into a meeting with my team and said, I've got way too much on my plate, I cannot get it all done. What shall I focus on? That is a strategy conversation, and it impacts us on a very daily basis. Now, governance is the next conversation, and it's really about a pattern level of what our shared agreements are for who does what with what authority in the organization. So it's things like roles and accountabilities, policies, protocols, procedures. And an example of this might be if I found that my computer was broken. I might go to a colleague and ask, is there an IT department around here? And do they fix computers? So that's a pattern level. The IT department hopefully fixes computers because I need them to. No, because many of us might need that. And conversely, operations are the specific daily details for what we need to get done in our daily work environment. So all of the projects, all of the next actions for getting our work done. And back to that computer example, I might ask my IT guy, hey, can you get my computer fixed by Friday? I have a presentation to give. So that's the operational conversation. Now, the interpersonal really is all of the relationships between the individuals who work in an organization. I liken it to a field of relatedness, so much like the air between us. It's always present, and it's either nourishing us or it's draining us, or anywhere in between on that spectrum. An example might be if I had a colleague that I really didn't understand. We had such different work styles, and neither one of us really understood each other very well. That can be getting in the way of us actually doing a good job together. That's an interpersonal conversation. And the last but not least is the individual. The individual is me and you with all of our gifts, all of our liabilities, all of our growing edges. And this is where an example might be that I realize I've showed up for the 5th time in a row unprepared for a meeting, and I'm noting to myself, I don't like this. Perhaps a colleague of mine mentioned something about it. Either way, I'm realizing this is a growing edge for me and something I want to change. That's an individual conversation. So some really interesting things happened once I saw these 7 different conversations, and I'm going to highlight just a few of them for us here. First of all, that they are all happening already, but often unconsciously. And the trouble with having them unconsciously is that the outcomes of that, the content that comes out of an unconscious conversation, may or may not really meet the needs of the situation. Another thing that happens is that sometimes these conversations are merged with each other. As I mentioned, business model and strategy are commonly conflated. Now, the problem with that is this. Every single one of these conversations requires a different kind of content or output from it, and therefore a different kind of process. The process that we would use for our business model conversation and the output of that is vastly different than the conversation we need to have around strategy and the outcomes from that conversation. So when we try to merge those conversations, the outputs become muddy. The process can often take far longer because we're trying to do 2 different things at once. We're trying to use a hammer and a screwdriver on the same thing at the same time. It often just doesn't work, or takes much, much longer than we might desire. So the third thing that happens is that often troubles show up in one conversation that have roots in another. A great example of this is interpersonal conflict. And frankly, often interpersonal conflict has roots in a different conversation. It could be our shared agreements are not clear. It could be our purposes misaligned, or that we have no effective strategy at the moment and we're under a lot of pressure. but the challenge shows up, the issues show up in the interpersonal, yet they have roots elsewhere. And if we try to address it through the interpersonal, we will probably get partial, if any, results. Much like if you or I were to go to a doctor and ask them to help us, and they chose to treat only our symptoms. We might or might not experience any relief from that. It's not certain. But once the actual root causes of a challenge can be identified, now we can use the right process to get us to the right content outputs that help us get a better job done together. So, what I found so exciting about these 7 conversations is building simple, integrative practices for these clear work conversations so we can have them clearly for everyone throughout an organization. And what I mean by integrative is that in the last several decades, there's been a tremendous amount of work done in both organizational and individual development. Often that work is kind of off in its own little corner, celebrating the good that has been developed. And I was really curious about what's the integrative possibility here? What's the synthesis? Because many of these methodologies and ideas and theories and practices have great value. Once these 7 conversations became clear, there was a place to integrate much of the great value of what's been done in the last several decades into a simple set of learnable practices that can be used organization-wide. To give you a concrete example, one of my favorite principles that's integrated into these practices is that waste equals food. So it's a principle from ecology. Waste equals food. In other words, in healthy ecosystems, there is no waste. Everything is reconsumed. Now, the corollary to our human organizational ecosystems is that as a species, we've evolved this incredible capacity, actually, to notice what's not working, what's wrong, what's missing, what's broken. However, in most organizations, there is no good equal sign between the waste and the food. There is no rapid, reliable mechanism for taking all of that negative input and producing productive solutions. So guess what? That waste accumulates and accumulates and accumulates. Much like plaque on the walls of our arteries, constricting the operating space of an organization. So what these simple set of learnable practices do is enable us to harness this incredible capacity that we have evolved over millions of years to notice what's not working and rapidly convert it into productive solutions that benefit the organization and the individuals involved. So at the end of the day, when I sat back and looked at the research, I looked at my question, I looked at my hypothesis, I realized that the missing part of the equation really was good process. So we do need good people, absolutely. We do need good intentions, and we need good process to reliably get us to good organization. And to give you a more concrete sense of how this works, how it delivers benefit in action, I was recently training a team in a specialty food business, and the owner was really struggling with too much on her plate, just too much to do, and she was really ready to throw in the towel. And once the team began to use this lens, they realized they had very little clarity about who had authority for what in the organization. So remember, often these conversations are happening unconsciously. So they were operating unconsciously, but the lack of clarity meant that way too much was falling on the owner's shoulders. So once the team took some time and clarified who had authority for what, the owner was able to step back, take a well-deserved vacation, and return to the organization rejuvenated. Sometimes people ask me, we really are good people here. I love my coworkers. I love this organization. It's a good organization. It has an incredible vision and mission. Why can't we just work together effectively? And what makes sense to me is that we've just been stumbling around in the dark of our work conversations without a good way of seeing the territory, without a really good way of understanding what it is that we need to have good outputs on and good process to get to. So with this new lens, we can really leverage more effective ways of getting and sharing the information we need in order to do good work together. So we're really excited to be sharing this new lens, or way of seeing our work communication with you that's been delivering so much value for the organizations that are putting it to use. We'd really like you to be able to make good use of it, and so we've put together a packet of tools, including some practices and downloadable PDFs of the 7 conversation meeting cards that you are welcome to make use of. And I would also love to hear from you. Please share your comments, your thoughts, your questions in the comment field below. I'll be responding to you personally. And thank you so much. I look forward to hearing what you think.
I hope you enjoyed this view of organizational communication and can put these new tools to use in your lives and work. We're really curious to know how these ideas have landed with you and would love to hear your comments and questions. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below so we can all learn from each other's experience. We'll be responding personally to your comments, and I'm really looking forward to this dialogue. So again, if you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share, just type them in the comments section below, and be sure to share this video and toolkit with others that you think could make good use of it. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to avail yourself of these tools and resources. We hope you can use them to get more traction in your mission and your life, and we wish you really well in your work. So let's go make a difference.